So I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Lashon Daley is the director of the National Center for the Study of Children's Literature and an assistant professor of English and comparative literature at San Diego State University. She earned her PhD in performance studies with a designated emphasis in new media from the University of California, Berkeley. She also holds an MFA in writing from Sarah Lawrence College and an MA in folklore from UC Berkeley. Her children's book, Mr. Okra Sells Fresh Fruits and Vegetables, was released in February 2016. So I welcome Lashon to start her talk.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for being here. It's really great to see my students in the audience and faces I have yet to meet. So I want to go ahead and present to you all some of the curiosities that I've been processing in terms of my research over the past couple of years. So I will be presenting an excerpt from one of my most recent articles titled Coming of Rage, a new genre for contemporary narratives about Black girlhood, where I explore these 4 articulations of my term coming of rage. And most specifically, I will be focusing on just one articulation for today, and then provide evidence for my claim through the lens of the French film Girlhood, which was released in 2014. So before I do that, I want to just quickly zoom out and kind of give you an overall holistic view of my research. My book project, titled Black Girl Lit, Coming of Rage Performances in Contemporary U.S. Black Girlhood Narratives, 1989 to 2019, which I know is a mouthful, charts how children's literature, film, television, and social media has helped shape our cultural understanding of what it means to be young, Black, and female in the U.S. So what I do is I combine extensive research from African American literary studies, Black girlhood studies, and performance and media studies in order to assemble these kind of compelling cultural artifacts that call attention to the increasing love for and theft of youthful Black femininity in American culture between the years of 1989 and 2019. And as you can see from the slide, these cultural artifacts are as wide-ranging as the 1990 sitcom Family Matters, which premiered between the years of 1989 and 1998, to Misty Copeland's children's book Firebird, to social media hashtags such as hashtag #ThousandBlackGirlBooks, to elucidate why coming of rage is the kind of necessary pivotal lens into understanding what happens when Black girls become Black women. Regarding my critical framework, I play on the term literature, truncating it to lit, a word that not only means the past participle of light, right, light, lit, but also colloquially connotes the brilliance and outstanding nature of the Black girls on which I focus. I then argue that to be lit is to be young, Black, and female, experiencing the light and shadows that results from life's euphoria as well as its withdrawals. I also define lit in 2 ways. The first way is the liminal space between Black girlhood and Black womanhood, and then 2, the affective spectrum between Black girl joy and Black girl rage. And as a result of these lit experiences, I assert that Black girls do not come of age, but rather they come of rage. To come of rage is when a Black girl maneuvers through her lit experiences in pursuit of survival, subjectivity, agency, and autonomy. When Black girls come of rage, they implement navigational strategies to ensure their future, their prosperity, and their independence, as well as their interdependence. Also, you can see on this slide that I have my 4 delineated articulations of rage as to why this kind of necessary paradigm shift is really important in apprehending how Black girls experience their maturation processes. These articulations include to become raged upon, to rage against, to become all the rage, and to become enraged. Out of the 4 articulations of coming of rage, today I will be focusing on to become all the rage, which I define as where visibility and opacity are at their peak, where there is a chasm between fame and obscurity, and where Black girls express their most zealously autonomous and authorial selves despite the burden of their quadrupled Black. In the article, I explore 4 films: Girlhood, The Fits, The Hate You Give, and See You Yesterday, which mark a 5-year span of contemporary on-screen performances of Black girlhood in the independent, major, international, and small screen film scenes. I discuss these films alongside movie posters, a book cover, and casting and music choices in order to pinpoint how Black girls become raged upon by their communities, experience emotional rage as an effective response to violence and trauma, and are promoted as all the rage icons. Now let us explore all the rage. So just to note, on the screen, you're seeing 2 different film posters. On the left, you're seeing the American version of the film poster, and then on the right, you're seeing the French film version of the poster. So Girlhood is described as a French coming-of-age film, which, as a result of my work, I redefine as a coming-of-age film, which centers 4 girls who live in an underserved African-French community outside of Paris, France. They spend their days hustling and fighting, but find refuge and comfort in their intimate bond and self-sustained community of 4. So now I'm going to play what is considered the most iconic scene of the film. Awash in a blue cinematic glow, the protagonists of Girlhood, Bon de Fille in French, serenade each other with the lyrics of Rihanna's 2012 pop hit Diamonds. Shielding themselves from their daily fights, boredom, and family conflicts, Lady Adiatou, Philly, and Vic have rented out a hotel room, gorged on junk food and liquor, and stolen dresses. Lady, the leader, stares directly into the camera during a close-up, signaling a central shift in the relationship between spectator and performer. As the scene opens, Lady is the star of the music video. She lip syncs the first few lines of Diamonds, nodding and swaying to the beat. Soon her gaze turns, the camera pans out, and Adiatou dances into the shot. They interlock their fingers and sing into each other's faces, smiling at one another with the kind of joy and warmth that can only be expressed between 2 interconnected bodies. They are each other's chosen kin. Moments later, as the music builds, Filey jumps into the shot. The electricity of the moment is visible on Vic's face as the camera closes in on the blue highlights, reflecting her lips, her left cheek, nose, and forehead. Their energy soon pulls Vic off of the bed, and she joins them in the full blue light. Their dark skin and hair reflect the saturated shades of blue against the light walls and curtains. Specks of light bounces off of their jewelry, teeth, nails, and bobby pins like diamonds in the night sky. The film's 4 protagonists model in all the rage kind of rage, permeated by extreme visibility and dimming opacity, spangled lights, heightened affect, and an intensified vulnerability in order to reveal how these gestures of intimacy in a private hotel room turn the film's most iconic scene into a mediated object characterized by 1, popular iconography, and then 2, widespread legibility. In what screenwriter and director Celine Sciamma describes as, quote, the most important scene, Lady Adiatou, Philly, and Vic perform everyday strategies of negotiating support and obligation from others, gaining material resources, finding loyalty, and discovering self-assertion. And that's a quote from Fields and Simmons' work on Black girlhood and kinship. Occurring 1/3 of the way into the film, this scene is a kind of exhale from the loss, the grief, the frustration, and the raging against that characterizes the girls' previous on-screen experiences. So this eruption of joy is the respite from the distress that pervades their young lives. The girls appear to be safe, so safe that they let their guards down. For this moment, they are just girls singing out their friendship anthem. For this moment, the audience is not worried about the next fit of rage or raging against. Rather, the audience is enveloped in their transition of rage as it moves into joy. In an interview with Premiere Scene, Shyama explains, quote, "It's a key scene because it is about the birth of a friendship and how friendship is a choreography. And it's the key scene because that's the time that they love each other. And it's also the moment where you actually love them." I actually reframe this scene as more than just a proclamation of sisterhood or friendship and a desire to make Black girl kinship more legible. Rather, it is an opportunity to explore how coming of rage is imbued with light, illumination, and the desire to shine bright like a diamond. In her work, Shine, the Visual Economy of Light in African Diasporic Aesthetic Practice, Krista Thompson pinpoints how photographic and videographic expressions are pertinent to the ways African diasporic communities in the Caribbean and in the United States experience music and culture, and how these expressions define their worldview, and she particularly argues that this is true for the youth. Shyama's use of Rihanna's diamonds in Girlhood expands Thompson's geographic scope and provides an opportunity for an additional exploration of this phenomenon. Shyama understands this scene as an opportunity to draw the viewer into an intimate moment of Black girl joy, or more specifically, African girl joy, that has the spontaneity of a home movie rather than a scripted film scene. Her desire to implant a quintuple platinum-selling record diasporic African female global pop artist is not insignificant. Shyama's inclusion of diamonds speaks to her desire to bring visibility to Lady Adiatu, Philly, and Vic and their coming of age narrative. Their visibility is also illuminated by their own desire to represent and to be represented, for Black girls are best seen when standing in the light. Paradoxically, while the protagonists of Girlhood sing about the luminosity of a diamond, they are shaded in the dark blue. This scene highlights the liminality of their situation and their representation. They sing of hypervisibility while shrouded in the shadows. It is this liminality that marks their all the rage kind of rage, where visibility and opacity are at their peak, where there is a chasm between fame and obscurity, and where Black girls express their most zealously autonomous and authorial selves despite the burden of their quadrupled lack. Thus, this all the rage kind of rage that Lady Adiatu, Philly, and Vic experience in this scene is created by the contrast between the darkness and then the glow of shiny objects. There, all the rage is the gap between who they are on the outside and who they are on the inside of this hotel room. It is also the negative space between their bodies as they brush up against one another and groove to the music. As they experience this rager kind of rage, a moment of surrender from the fight mentality that forces the soft hearts of Black girls to become hard like diamonds. It is there that they become all the rage. In an MTV News article, Rihanna explains that diamonds is a call to action to find one's source of happiness. And I would add that it is also about staging one's visibility. As Thompson writes, quote, "Visual technologies occupy the spaces, virtually extend the worlds, and create the reflective surfaces of interaction between African diasporic groups. In other words, Rihanna's diasporic representation as a global pop phenomenon from Barbados sheds light on Girlhood's African diasporic subjects in the marginalized communities of Paris, so that there is then this gap between Rihanna's image and theirs, her fame and their obscurity, her shine and their dark blue shroud that aids in the characterization of their coming of rage." This gap is what Thompson calls after images, and Thompson defines after images as the optical illusions that persist in one's vision after exposure to light or visual stimulus. So when you're taking a photo and you get the flash and you see those markings, that's what she's considering an after image. So therefore, these after images do the work of memory over and against the possibilities of disappearance or forgetting, shaping the very matter of memory and photography through their embodied forms. So then what I argue is that the pairing of diamonds, with the abrupt change in spectatorship, along with the dramatic blue lighting, makes this musical vignette unforgettable. Therefore, it is an after image. So by May of 2020, this excerpted scene from Girlhood had been viewed nearly 250,000 times on YouTube, compared to Rihanna's Diamonds video, which had at that point been viewed 1.4 billion times, rightly so. So the excerpted scene then acts as an after image that continues to generate exposure and visibility. Both videos promote the same ideals of Black female representation and legibility, which is we're beautiful like diamonds in the sky. Rihanna's Diamonds give the protagonists of Girlhood a base on which to reposition themselves as illuminated, celestial beings where their race and gender are built on their high self-esteem, are on their self-image and self-value. So in the blue shadows, they are living what we call their glow up as a result of Rihanna's representation. Rising above their precarious citizenship status towards the sky, where these kind of light-based hyperboles are very familiar to Black femininity, and those are real. For example, Alicia Keys' Girl on Fire, Victoria Monet's Glow, and Doja Cat's Shine. It is again as a result of this kind of shine that Lady Adiatu, Phoebe, and Vic are able to access their all-the-rage status. For Black girls like Lady Adiatu, Phoebe, and Vic, whose beauty is ethereal, their bodies otherworldly, they embody a quadrupling of liminalities. Scholar Nina Carter argues that the representation of Black women on screen is destabilized and exemplifies a kind of lack. They do not have the affordability of Black men who are empowered by patriarchy, and in addition, they do not receive the liberalities of white womanhood, which is used to define femininity. So subsequently, I argue that Black girls experience a quadrupling of lack due to their status as children. They do not possess the power that is often afforded to adults. So when a gang of Black girls, and I use the term gang because bond de filles translates to gang. So when a gang of Black girls and that's a whole other conversation. So when a gang of Black girls like the protagonists of Girlhood are able to, if only for a night, rise above their low status towards the ethereal heavens, they produce what Carter explains as future text liminality. This is the space where unlimited possibilities can occur, and Carter argues that this is where chaos becomes productive. And what can look like disorder and disharmony can actually represent the foundations of artisanal filmmaking or a necessary ungroundedness as a hallmark of Black ontological coping strategies within oppressive societies. Accordingly, Lady Adiatu, Phoebe, and Vic use the chaos of their continuous experiences with violence, sexism, and racism to co-produce their own self-sustaining society, where their rage deepens their intimacy, vulnerability, and community within this private rager for four. As Girlhood shines light on the struggles of Black girls in marginalized communities in Paris, it is also by using Rihanna's song Diamonds that is shedding light on how light provides a necessary frame and enclosure around the visibility and representations of Black girls in the diaspora. And I will end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lashon. Actually, if you have a couple of more slides, there is time for you to show us, because our second speakers had some technical problems. So if you want to add anything to it, you have other 10 minutes to do so. If not, we can open the discussion. It's up to you.
I can go back to one slide in particular and kind of explore how this conversation with this one particular film kind of leads to the American film. So the thing about my research, because I'm focusing on the US, what does it mean to kind of take a US framework and place it on a film that is developed in a different context, such as African girls in marginalized communities in Paris? But the reason why I was able to link that was because of this song, Rihanna, right, which became this really kind of global hit, which then transferred that movie that was kind of an independent film in France to become seen and much more visible in the US. So then that started to bring conversations kind of across, well, how is Black girlhood being seen in France? And there's lots of controversy around that particular film. Are we having the same kind of stereotypes around Black girlhood, regardless of the communities in which they're coming from, because they're always seen as these marginalized figures? In this particular film, the Fit's looking at girls who don't necessarily follow the gender norms. In the Fit's, this one particular protagonist she is training to be a boxer, but then she moves into kind of traditional girl forms of cheerleading. And then, of course, in The Hate U Give, we see her opportunity to move through the tragic death of her friend, but also move towards aggression and violence as she becomes a kind of political activist in the space. And of course, See You Yesterday, I don't know if any of you have seen it. It may still be on Netflix. It's actually really great. But this young protagonist goes back in time to try to prevent the killing of her brother. And she basically spends all of her energy recreating that day to try to save him. But in instance, is almost killing herself. And in that particular conversation, I look at how are Black girls a part of this like very activist culture, but as a result of it, also killing themselves in the meantime. So I can leave it there and then we can just open it up for questions.
Thank you so much. It was extremely interesting. Thank you. And really, it's an amazing research with a lot of open path that can be followed. So I will open the stage for questions, and I have a couple of questions myself. So I can either keep them for the end of the discussion, or I can start by asking you. Let me see. Yeah, maybe I'm going to start first. So yes, while I was watching the clip that that you show us, I was wondering whether friendship relationships came to replace in modern storytelling the role of romantic love. Would you say that this is what is happening and is coming of age happening first or in a different way? What does it mean for the individuals? So if you could just add a few things on that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I was actually on a panel this summer talking about, is friendship in these kind of young adult novels the new way of looking at romance, that they don't always have to be kind of heteronormative expectation of girl meets boy or boy meets girl and falling in love? Can we experience the same kind of genre of romance around friendship? I definitely think we can. I think the issue of what happens in terms of kind of more popular representations is that it doesn't happen with Black girls and or girls in general. In my class, we often talk about girl fighting, which is this kind of concept that girls horizontally create violence against each other. So when we're thinking about some of the most kind of iconic films in girlhood, we're always referring to the one mean girl or the girl who doesn't get along with other girls, and then a guy finds her and turns her beautiful and everyone loves her, or the girl who's really popular and then takes in some other girls into their kind of clique circle. It's pretty rare to actually find a film based on the love of girls. And so is it possible? I think it's 100% possible, and I think it's what we're needing, but that there is this kind of constant desire not to see girls love each other, but actually to see girls in conflict. And of course, we can see that in terms of reality TV, every housewife iteration. There's even this show called Bad Girls where they put really contentious girls into, or actually they're women, into a house to live together. And basically they spend every day trying to fight each other. And that is entertainment. So I think in terms of the industry, it is more profitable to see girls and women fighting than it actually is seeing them love on each other. In this particular scene, right, this is such a short scene in comparison to, the 90 minutes of like seeing them fighting. They are literally fighting every other moment, but it's this one scene where you're like, watching them not fight. Like, they do have kind hearts. Oh, they do love each other, but it's actually pretty rare to see those kinds of scenes.
Thank you so much. In my research, I worked on coming of age novels as well, mainly in Italian literature, and I was wondering whether we could frame female friendship within the coming of age theories. And my answer was yes, this is very much possible, but it implies a further reflection upon the relationship with tradition. So I would say that contemporary coming of age novels would look at friendship as a way to kind of set themselves free from tradition, but at the same time without cutting completely the bond with the past, with the roots. So, what is in the films that you analyzed the relation with tradition, with their families? Are they stepping away from it, from whatever families represents, or they can find a compromise between what they will become and what they come from?
Yeah, in another instance, especially when I look at Family Matters, I often actually talk about how Black girls in popular narrative, right? This doesn't necessarily mean in kind of a sociological context, are actually pushed out of their homes because they're not following traditional expectations of young white femininity, which is to go to school, get your education, be quiet, right? So because they're not following those traditional expectations, they are then pushed out of their homes because their mothers can't handle them or their fathers can't handle them. So even in Girlhood, the reason why these girls have started their own gang essentially is because they were pushed out of their homes because they weren't doing well in school. Once you're not doing well in school, your family gets frustrated with you, they push you out, you have to find community elsewhere. So these girls actually, and you'll see this in the scene, they actually like hang out around the school as if they're going to go, but then they start bullying other girls, taking their money, taking whatever they need. And so it's interesting to think that even in these popular films, the reason why there's so much anxiety around these girls is because they don't have family, they don't have community. Even in the fits, you never see parents. It's just her and her brother. So her brother wants to learn how to become a boxer. So in order to spend time with her brother, she also becomes a boxer. When she no longer wants to box, you no longer see her in relationship with her brother. You start to see her in relationship with other girls, where she's starting to build family. But again, it is in that removal that we no longer see her brother. We never see her parents. So yeah, it is a really interesting thing I think about entertainment, is that our desires to see Black girls in a very particular way. And often that's the way in which they're angry, rageful, separated from their family, and really kind of causing chaos.
Thank you so much. The more you talk, the more new questions come into my mind. So if you don't mind, I would just ask you one last question before I really leave. I drop the mic and I leave someone else the stage. So, and also, by the way, if you don't want to speak, you can also type your question in the chat and I'm going to read it for you. So my last question is the following, I don't know, but before, is this. So what is the role of love in this growing up process? Is love a goal? It is a rite of passage or what?
I've never considered love in terms of Black girlhood. And I say that because I feel when I think of coming of age, love is again often this kind of hetero expectation of a girl must fall in love with a boy. And that happens in these films. It's just in terms of thinking of love as an opportunity to explore oneself. Like, I feel like these movies are really about perhaps the exploration of self-love rather than love of someone else and or to receive love. If we're thinking about, of course, like the four various loves, right? There's friendship love, and then there's romantic love, and then there's erotic love. all of those show up in the context. Is that the main goal? I would say no. I actually think autonomy and almost, and I don't know if I want to actually make this claim right now, but I would say I would claim that autonomy is often the number one goal when I see Black girls on screen or in kind of popular media, that their desire to shed whatever responsibilities that have given to them by some sort of authorial female figure, and then remove that from themselves and to kind of explore their own, like who they are as a Black girl. Often that unfortunately has to do through trauma, violence, sexual assault, things like that. But I wouldn't say like romantic love is the kind of key or core things that I'm often seeing when it comes to Black girls. And that's mostly, again, because of this quadruple lack. Because Black women aren't seen as sexual desires often in film, Black girls are less likely to be seen as sexually desired in films. So films around their ability to love and be sexual, be sexualized or sensual is lacking. When I do see that, it is often of mixed race Black girls who often have some sort of white parent or Black parent. Then we will see a much more likely of a girl having a romantic pairing. And then that just has to come down to colorism in a lot of ways.
And in what you say, there is also the element of class that I would love to explore later on. But first, I'm going to read a question that Federica dropped in the chat. So Federica says, how does film production and photography shape these representations of Black girlhood in the movies you analyzed? And what kind of visual model is brought forth?
That is also a really great question. And I'll go back to sharing this slide because in my research, I also look at, visual culture and actual photography. So even when we're looking at, I should go back to actually the difference. So this difference in terms of the Girlhood French version and the Girlhood American version. Even when we're thinking about like this expectation, that they don't deserve to be fully seen in the American version, right? They remain kind of shrouded in the dark blueness of the light. So even if you're looking at the poster, you're not even really able to see their faces, like who they are individually, versus in this French film or the French poster where we can actually take in all of their faces. Simple things like that then bring meaning to the film in a particular kind of way, right? Even with the delineating between the term girlhood versus gang of girls. When you see a title that says gang of girls, and then you're able to actually visualize their faces, what are we looking at? We're looking at girls who aren't necessarily smiling. We're also looking at girls who are like directly looking you in your eye. So there's almost also an antagonistic way in which they're looking at you. I also talk about this too, and when we're looking at the film poster for The Hate U Give, right? She's making direct eye contact. So if you look away, you know she's still looking at you. Again, she's not smiling. The same thing with the fits. She's also very direct with her gaze. Again, she's not smiling. Like, so that when I talk about this concept of Black girl attitude, it is actually reinforced in all the ways in which we see film posters around Black girls. Even in the See You Yesterday, again, she's focused, she's not directly looking at us, so there isn't kind of this antagonistic moment, she's looking away, but again, she's not smiling. So if I were to send this to any person and say, what do you think Black girlhood is when you're looking at these film posters and these images, or even how kind of light is used? I may think that, oh, wow, Black girls really are having a hard time, why are they not smiling? Why are they not, why aren't there images of them not looking so angry or upset? So even when I think about how film posters or movie covers impact our understanding of Black girlhood, so much of it comes down to these simple things of how a photograph is taken for a poster.
Thank you. And there is another question from Donica and another one from Imelda. So I'm reading the first one. While watching the clip from Bandefi, is brought to mind the film Set It Off and how the image of these four Black girls took me there. I almost feel that this depiction could have been the four girls before they became women. In this film, it led to tragedy. Do you see a similar narrative if you have seen the film? Do you think this connects the idea of gang of girls? Because in Set It Off, the girl gang turns to criminals.
That is actually really brilliant, Annika. Thank you for bringing that up. I had not thought about how this could be the prequel to Set It Off, but I 100% think it is, especially because Khadijah or Queen Latifah in that particular film models so much of Vic, who was the main protagonist, who's the girl who like sits on the bed the last and then comes up to, she ends up turning much more criminal throughout the film. She ends up dropping out of school and kind of helping a drug ring situation. And so you almost see, and she, of course, she wants to get out of it, but you can almost see how then that, 20 years down the line, they would have come back together and then created an even larger ring around that. So yeah, 100%, I can definitely see those two connections. I should do more work in that. But.
And I'm gonna move toward the next question by Imelda. Why do you think the media portrays the girls of color not getting along or fighting?
I think girls not fighting is a very lucrative business with girls of color and with girls in general. There is a really strong desire to see girls fighting. It is a popular narrative. And so how do we reframe that narrative? I'm not entirely sure. Would we not watch Mean Girls? I mean, every time I teach my class on girlhood, Mean Girls comes up as this cult classic. Why? Why isn't it called like Friendship Girls Get Along and Love Each Other? Would we go watch that movie? I'm not entirely sure. But I also know that my students are going to log off in 1 minute. So I just want to quickly thank them for joining me, and that I will see them in class on Tuesday, Wednesday, once they start to log off.
Well, anyway, we are almost moving toward the end of our time together. So unfortunately, the other speaker, Frances Smith, had some technical problems, so she couldn't be with us today, but it's been really brilliant to listen to your talk, Lashon, and to your answers. Really, I honestly could stay here with you talking about coming of age and girlhood for other 3 hours or so. I am not sure if there are other questions for you, but well, if not, I am going to leave you with one last question from myself, which is, where do you think this research is going to lead you? What are the next steps?
Yes, I am currently writing a book proposal, thinking through more kind of context of, is this really the move that's going to continue, or is this something that only happened between those kind of 30 years of popular television? Like, have we moved out of this yet? I think for now, I think it's really important to claim that this has been a move in terms of entertainment for 30 years. And then perhaps my next volume will be the following 30 years. But for now, I'm writing my book proposal about this kind of claim of how popular this kind of narrative around girls coming of age has been for us. Would it be an easy move to kind of move away from this? I'm not entirely sure. Or is media going to double down on this narrative? I think that's what I have left to see. But for now, this is my claim.
And we are going to follow your outcomes. So thank you so much. It was really amazing to have you and to have all of you with us as guests for this evening. Let me just remind you that our series of talks will be available with the recordings on the IMLR website in form of podcast. So please keep on following us, and if you miss anything, you can catch up easily. So yeah, have a lovely evening, everyone, and I will see you next week, hopefully. Thank you, Lashon. Bye.
Bye.